Okay, excuse me. Good afternoon. Going to warm you up by showing you a little video to remind you of why we do the work that we do. Get you back in the mood after lunch.
Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom, no talking, quietly.
Hey, Miss Meta, how you doing?
We need you inside.
How do you think that makes us feel? I forgot my number.
What's your name?
Jordan?
What's your last name?
Carter?
Go ahead.
School is hard enough.
Come on in, sit down quietly at your desk, and begin writing.
This kind of stuff just makes it harder.
I said quietly, please. Who's talking? Is it you, Sophie? Don't let it be you.
Don't believe me?
Sophie.
Please just watch.
I'm not up here for me, I'm up here for you. Pay attention. Okay? Now somebody answer me. Somebody needs to answer me really fast.
Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, the teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
Moment by moment.
Mr. Daddy, your students' behavior yesterday in the lunchroom, it was terrible. Next time, silent lunch. Did you hear that? Stay in line and catch a bubble. I'm not playing.
If this is education, we're in trouble. Bye, Miss McGarity. Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. The way it is now, 2 of the 3 of us will never be able to really read. It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan. How you doing? Good.
Everyone we meet throughout our day can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
Good, how are you? Great. Hi, Jordan. Bye, Jason. Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead, put your number in.
Talk with us, not at us.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Teach us what we need to know.
Good morning.
That's how we get smarter.
Well, good morning, Sophie, Janicia, and Jordan.
And when you talk with us and teach us, give us bigger and bigger words.
Now what I'd like you to do, children, is turn around and converse with your neighbor and discuss where the mother might have gone.
Words that we can use to read and understand.
She is prey for eagles, so she hunts at night.
And that will take us places we could never reach without you.
Remember, we're entering the learning zone. Now, how can we show our respect to the children and teachers who are working?
We can walk quietly.
Yes. Okay, kids, so what I'd like you to do is continue writing your narrative, documenting your emotions if you were the baby owl and your mother abandoned you in the nest.
What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best.
We would have stayed and assisted them in whatever they needed.
Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be. Why would you want to silence us?
I love that video. We show that to our staff at the beginning of every school year. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Davis, and I am the principal of Springfield Elementary School. And with me today, I have Joanne Butler, who's a second grade teacher and coach of our core school-wide team. And next to Joanne is Kim McKenney, who is a reading specialist in our building and is also the facilitator of our check-in and check-out program. And we are very excited to be here with you today to share our journey, to share the experiences that we have had as a school district, as a small school in a district. Because everybody has a different experience and a different journey they go through. What we're going to share with you may be right for you, may not. You take what you want out of it. You'll see that there is a link right there. You can follow the presentation if you want to. If you have a laptop and go on, or if you want to jot that down, then you can access our presentation at a later time. At the end of the presentation, there's a link for all the handouts. We did put some handouts on the first few tables. If you're going out and want to pick up hard copies, some of the things we're going to be talking about, we have handouts on the tables, or you can access it from the actual PowerPoint presentation. And we hope to have time at the end to answer your questions. So here we go. So we are in the Palisades School District in the northernmost part of Upper Bucks County. We're about 80 to 90 minutes from both New York and Philadelphia, so that makes it a lot of fun for different field trip opportunities. We only have about 1,561 students in our small district. The district's about 100 square mile radius, so we're pretty spread out though, with 3 elementary schools with only like 185 to 232 students per building. A middle school, grades 6 to 8, with only 337 students, and one high school of around 595 students. And you know what, before I continue, I also forgot to introduce, where's our behavior consultant? Lisa Palisades also needs to be introduced, who's been in tremendous support for our team, so I had to mention Lisa. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey, how we started and how we got to where we are today. So back in 2015, the Director of Pupil Services asked us to consider piloting something called School-Wide Positive Behavior Program, because he said we're already doing so many great things at this building, like restorative practices, responsive classroom. We were running character trait programs. So he said, you would be a great building to pilot this. So I didn't know what we were getting into at the time, but we said, okay, sure, we'll do it. And we didn't jump in because we needed to improve discipline. We didn't really have discipline problems, but we needed a common language and an approach for discipline. You know, the kids will ask one teacher one thing, and then they get an answer they don't like, so then they go to the other teacher. And if you don't have that common language and approach to discipline, kids get confused, and they get different answers. So at that point, we decided to jump in, and we identified a school-wide team in the spring of 2016. So I was on the team. We have a primary teacher, which is Joanne, an intermediate teacher who was a 4th grade teacher, one of our specialists who was the music teacher, our school counselor, the school psychologist, an instructional assistant, and also a parent. And I think it's so key that when you develop your teams, you really want to have a representation of the building across different parts of the building, specialists, instructional assistants, different grade levels, so that way everyone's represented. We went through the 3-day training. We developed our school expectations, and at Springfield, our students are respectful, responsible, and kind. And at this point, I can ask even a kindergartner, what are our school expectations? And they will yell, respectful, responsible, and kind. The question is, do they really understand it and live it? And that's the trick to what we all do. So at that point, we developed our posters. We developed a brochure. We created a matrix about what it looks like to be respectful, responsible, and kind in the classroom, the hallway, the bathroom, the cafeteria, on the bus, and the playground. The bus drivers even let us, and we don't have our own bus company, but the drivers even let us make posters that we put on their buses so that the kids could remember the expectations. Then that summer, we had a lot of work to do. We started creating lesson plans. We made videos. So we had a small group to get together that summer. We had some fun making the videos, creating the lesson plans. Then we had to create discipline forms and try to understand the difference, a major versus a minor, and come up with definitions for what that means. Created new discipline forms, and then we had to learn about SWIS, which is the data management system that school-wide uses, so you can track the ODRs, the office discipline referrals. Then we took a baseline survey to get a sense of where are we as a staff so we can action plan for what we need to do to move forward. In the presentation on the tables, you'll see here's a brochure that we put together. It has our 6 colorful posters in it. And there's also a handout of our matrix that we put together. So from there, 2016-17 was our first year of implementation. We had a kickoff for staff and students in September. We explained the program to our parents. It was a big year of really explaining what is school-wide and how's this going to work and what does it mean, and we did that through newsletters and e-alerts and on the website. We had PTA meetings, other meetings as necessary, just to make sure that our school community was aware of this new program, this new way of life, the way we were going to roll at Springfield. Everyone got used to handling discipline in a different way. There was a lot of professional development on using positive language, understanding the difference between majors and minors, and just really pulling that all together. And then in 17-18 year was our second year of implementation. We continued the Tier 1 strategies. This was a huge year. If you remember, I know you're probably all at different places in school-wide, but year 2 was a killer because that was the year where we applied and we were lucky to receive a $5,000 grant from Patent for Tier 2. And this is when it got real busy. We sent members of what's called our student support team. That's like the old IST model. We call it SST, student support team. So with all that money, we were able to do some things. So we were able to go to the McDowell Institute at Bloomsburg University, send some of our SST people, which is our Tier 2 team, to learn different strategies. At that point, we selected a universal screening tool and had to understand what that was all about and how to use that. More professional development for staff, and then we looked at low-intensity strategies and created intervention grids, and Joanne's going to focus on the low-intensity strategies in a little bit. So that was a huge year, year 2. That year, we also passed our SET, the school-wide evaluation tool for implementing Tier 1 with fidelity, and earned our banner here a year ago. So then this year, in 18-19, we continued to fine-tune our program. Finally, we could make it our own because, before we were told, you have to do this, get this, you have to understand this piece of it. Now we've had all the pieces together and we can really look at, well, how is this going to work for us? So we were fine-tuning the program to make it work for Springfield Elementary. We also provided some workshops for our parents on making sure they understood the program with the help of Lisa Pleady, our behavior specialist, and what can parents do at home to support what we're doing at school. And that's key, to get the parents engaged and involved in what you do. So this year we also completed our BOQ, the benchmarks of quality, and today I'm proud to say we got our sustainability badge. So we continue to move forward and look forward to that. So I'm sure many of you have seen this. When you take a look at the green at the bottom, so that's if you have strong Tier 1 programming in this 3-tiered model of prevention, about 80% of your kids will be successful. You set up the school-wide expectations, you do what you do as a building, you're positive with students, and about 80% of your kids will pretty much be okay, and they'll won't have many discipline write-ups. And then there's that 15% in the yellow. Those are the specialized groups of kids that need a little more than what you're doing. Just if you think, I love to think about this in academics as well. It's very similar. You have that 80% and then that 15%. And just like academics, if you don't have the strong Tier 1, strong curriculum, how are you going to move to that Tier 2? So we're going to say over and over again, Tier 1 has to be strong before you get into Tier 2, that 15%. That's what our focus is going to be in this presentation. And then Tier 3 is that 5%. Those 5% of students who need more individualized systems, and we all have those students too. So I like to look at this triangle, and later on I'll show you what our triangle looks like with the data that we have. So there are some building blocks of Tier 2. You want to continue to work with staff to strengthen your Tier 1 strategies. You want to be positive. 4 to 1, 4 positives for every negative. Now, I heard in a presentation, it was our keynote this morning, that talked about it actually was 8 to 1. That's scary. I think staff has trouble with 4 to 1. But it's so important that we need to continue to find ways to catch kids doing things right and be positive. And, you know, you have to change mindsets. That's hard to do. Human nature is to point out what people are doing wrong instead of catching them doing things right. Our staff has had to learn to give warnings and teach expectations before just writing up students. We teach students academics, why don't we teach them behavior? So we have to teach kids how to behave appropriately, how to follow the expectations that we set. We can't just expect them to do it. So it's also another key block of Tier 2 is to enter the behavior data from your ODRs, your office discipline referrals, into SWIS, because from there you can see what the trends are, what you're doing well, areas that need to be improved, and then you can make adjustments to your program. We review our expectations at monthly assemblies. Our teachers and our students may present. We use our SWIS data to determine what we need to talk about, whether we need booster sessions in their homeroom, they have morning meeting first thing in the morning, or we may have an assembly where we talk about different things. One time we had students make posters on, we were having issues with defiance across the building, so we looked at trying to be positive, how do you comply? So each classroom made posters about compliance and what they should do. We've also most recently reviewed at one of our, we have Panther Pride. We are the Springfield Panthers. We have Panther Pride assemblies monthly. So that's an opportunity for our community to come together, and we recognize all the good things going on. And we also use that time to work with our students on areas that we have concerns about. The bathrooms. There was some, some kids fooling around in bathrooms. It's the end of the year. They needed to be reminded of school expectations and work hard to the end. So I gave them that whole speech. And then we tried something really cool, because I've been thinking about this whole notion of you have to be positive. And we had one student from every classroom compliment another student. And the student didn't know they were going to be complimented. So they came up to the microphone, if you can picture this little kindergartner, and they had to focus on why somebody was respectful, responsible, or kind, and how to talk about them. There were tears in the room. We had parents who come to our assemblies crying. It was wonderful. These kids were so cute, and you could see the smile on the kids' faces who were being complimented, because we don't do that enough. We're always, kids put each other down all the time. So we need to create ways for our kids to be positive with each other. So those are some of the things we do to help improve the areas that we identify. We have more data at our student support team meetings now because we have behavior data. We can be more proactive. We don't have to wait till the teacher makes a referral, because we have data, more data than ever before. You have academic data, we have behavioral data, so there's so much that you can do with that that sometimes it's overload. But we can be more proactive than ever before. Communication is key, and I want to say that over and over again. You have to inform the students, the staff, your parents, your community, what you are doing. They have to understand what your expectations are, how you're going to run things in the building. Another key piece is identifying Tier 2 strategies. Especially, we're using check-in, check-out. Kim is going to focus on that in a little while. And we also identified and utilize a behavior screening tool 3 times a year to identify students at risk for internal and externalizing behaviors. So we have monthly meetings. We have a core team to discuss the overall progress of our program. We have a SWIS team that reviews the data. And then we have an SST team, student support team, that's our Tier 2 team, that looks at the Tier 2 strategies that we are putting into place. And then there are also committees, developing lesson plans, developing positive rewards. And one of the most important things of all is you have to have different people on all these committees. It's the few that always do all the work. You have to reach out and get everyone involved. I require every single person in my building to be involved on a committee and take part. That's the only way that you can sustain a program, is to get everyone involved. There is a handout that we have called What is Tier 2? It's the who, what, why, HAL of Tier 2. You'll see that in there. And now I'm going to talk to you about our universal screening tool. So we selected the Student Risk Screening Scale for internalizing and externalizing behaviors, the SRSS-IE. One of the great things about it is that it's free, because you can pay money for some of these screeners. So before you do that, check out some of the free ones if you haven't approached this yet. So we implement this 3 times a year. In the fall, we do it 4 to 6 weeks after the start of school, because that's about enough time for our teachers to get to know their class and the students that they have in their class. We do it in the winter, right before we go on break, and then in the spring, 4 to 6 weeks before the end of the school year. So we did ours about a week ago to get a sense of which students would benefit, which students are at risk and could benefit from Tier 2 interventions. So students must be enrolled for at least 30 days, or you shouldn't screen them because you don't know enough about them. All teachers screen their own students, and this is very hard for teachers because they like to talk about the kids and figure out how to rate them. But you're really supposed to just do it where every teacher rates their own students, independent rating, no discussion, no explanation of what, and I'm going to show you what the different pieces of the scale are, but there should really be no discussion over any of the words. And the data needs to be secured, because what happens is once you do the screening, and let me, I'm just going to explain it to you from this handout. So there are 7, and there is a handout on this. There are 7 external behaviors, and they are steal, lie, cheat, sneak is one of them, behavior problem, peer rejection, low academic achievement, negative attitude, aggressive behavior. They're the 7 external behaviors. Then the 5 internal behaviors are emotionally flat, shy and withdrawn, sad, depressed, anxious, and lonely. And what the teachers do, they're sitting on their computers, because what we have done is we use Linkit for our data management system and ask them to create a data screen for us so that we can enter for each student what their scores are. So whatever kind of data system you use for academics, you could probably use that for behavior, but you want this data to be secure, because it's confidential and only the teacher or the administrator should be able to see it. So these teachers rate these students with all those terms that I just shared. Either 0, they never show that, 1, occasionally, 2, sometimes, or 3, frequently. And we were lucky enough, ours adds up automatically, and then you can see the externalizing score, the internalizing score, and then a total score. And then there are some different ranges. I'm not going to get into all that, but depending on the range, you know which students are low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. So it's the moderate and high risk students that you want to take a look at and discuss with your team, what are we going to do for them? How can we help these students so that they can be more successful in school? So that is the screening tool. The next piece are intervention grids. And this is something we were required to do at our training, and now I look back and I'm so glad that we learned how to do the grids, because this is a focus for next year as we continue to build our Tier 2. We need to build our grids. So basically what the grid consists of is an intervention, a description of what it is, entry and exit data, and what data are you using to determine if kids need an intervention. You're using your universal screener, academic data, discipline referral data, attendance, anything you want it to be, whatever your school decides. What kind of data are you using to monitor progress? And very important, you have to have exit data. How many times do we put kids in programs and then we never take them out? So you need to monitor the progress so that you can enter and exit kids. And we do that 3 times a year after we do our screening scale. Here's an example of one. So here's an example of check-in, check-out, and then a description of it where kids are checking in and out with a mentor each day on targeted goals. You can see our entry data. So all that SRSS stuff, those are the scores, the moderate range and the for external, and then the moderate range for internal. or so that's moderate, or they could be at the high level, 3 or more minor or majors. Those are discipline referrals. We look at attendance, we look at report cards, and these are all the things we consider to determine. And the bigger school you are, the more kids you're going to have that are going to come through. That's why you have to have specific criteria. You're going to have 100 kids in your intervention program, and that can be too much. So you really have to kind of wean it down and figure out who are the most struggling students that we can help. Then you want to monitor the progress, and just with this particular example, we use our check-in, check-out progress report sheets. Kim's going to tell you all about that later. And then how do you exit out? Well, if the scores become lower on the universal screening data, if they're hitting their goal on check-in, check-out, maybe they've reduced their tardiness or they've improved grades. So that's kind of how this works. And everything you do, if you note it in here, then you have it. You can show parents this. This is what these are intervention grids. This is what we do. So we have an example of our intervention grids, but we want to continue to build it, and that's our next step as a school. Okay, so at this time, I am going to turn it over to Joanne Butler, who's going to tell you about low-intensity strategies.
Good afternoon. So I want to tell you a little bit about strengthening our Tier 1. You know, we worked a lot on making our lesson plans. Of course, we created them in a Google Slides presentation to make it accessible to all of our faculty and staff and our students, and then, you know, had the lesson plans with the video clips in it. And so we asked for some feedback, you know, from our staff on how those lesson plans worked for them and if there were any materials that maybe could be added to it. And so I met with another teacher to put that out there to the staff, looking for some feedback from them. And from there, we also had our kickoff, and as Scott mentioned, you know, we did kickoff, and we did like a Jeopardy kind of game kickoff to begin with, and then we upped it this past school year, the start of the school year. We, you know, got all students involved and had teams. You know, we split it into 2 groups, primary and intermediate, and I was a host for the primary, and one of our other core member teams was, core team members was the host for the intermediate, and we had created questions, crafted them all based on our school-wide expectations, and all students came up and participated and got rewards, and so that was a really exciting time for them. So we're continuing to try to grow that and make it even more for the next school year. We've also added some signs to our building in different areas besides the school expectation signs. We've added, you know, we have a Chromebook cart, an iPad cart, and we had some things happening with our Chromebooks. Some have been dropped, and so we came together as a team. I met with some primary teachers, and we discussed ways of how we could make it so that all students hear the message of how these are cared for, and then from there, you know, we created these posters to add to the areas, and it provided that visual for our students, and we know that everyone's had that understanding then of how to care for those. So that's something that we continue. And, you know, looking at maybe other areas where that might be helpful. And of course, you know, we've talked as a staff, how might we have, you know, what are some things that we can do in our building yet that will help to improve the environment of the building. And so we had talked about a wall of mirrors where in the hallway you have all these mirrors lined up, and positive sayings around them so that students can walk by them, look in the mirror, then, you know, read that positive saying. So that's something we're talking about for the future. And also adding some signs to our bathrooms, like artwork. We've talked about decorating bathroom stalls, you know, having those positive messages. And so as Scott said, we do booster sessions based on the data. We look at what are some areas that still need some work. And so we have our booster sessions during our Panther Pride assemblies for all the students. And those are all a message that everyone gets to hear. And so really, you know, we're looking at we started to look at some best practices then, some additional classroom management strategies. And we were able to get some more information on them from our CI3T website here that we learned about through our McDowell Institute training that Scott had already mentioned. And so these are just practices that may not be inherent in all educators' practices. And so this is a great resource, this CI3T website, and it's a great way to learn about some more strategies and approaches. We chose 3 that we were going to focus and start on because, small steps as you go here. And so we felt that these might reach more of the group than just your basic lesson plans or booster sessions. And also, it could be something that you may find that may give guidance to new teachers or other teachers who may be struggling in certain areas. They could be a recommended strategy for them. And so 3 of the approaches that we chose are active supervision, behavior-specific praise, and pre-correction. And so our role as, we went through this, we were looking to, as Scott had said, our SST or Tier 2 team decided on these 3 strategies or approaches and felt that they would best fit our needs at the time. And so, you can go through the website there, as you can see there, it's www.ci3t.org. And under the professional learning tab there are other strategies, but like I said, we just chose 3 to start with. And so the idea was to recruit some staff members, to help us and to be able to, become lead teachers or expert teachers. So the principal presented these strategies then, the 3 chosen ones, to the professional staff during our faculty meetings. And at that time, teachers were asked to research these. So we were looking for 2 lead teachers, and they were to become experts on one of the strategies and then research them. So I had volunteered, and our music teacher, we became a team. Our librarian and our reading specialist became a team, and we had 2 first-grade teachers who stepped up and became a team to learn about the 3 strategies here and then present. And so we were able to go to the website. We were able to learn more about our 3 strategies. We found additional resources, watched the videos, and basically created a presentation again with our Google Slides. And that seems to be a wonderful way to share the document, share what we needed to share with everyone. Also because we were able to work on it simultaneously. Some of our teams are not in the same building all the time, so the music teacher is in different buildings. So it was nice that we were able to still work on it together, even though we weren't in the same building at the time. And we printed out handouts that we found there too that we thought were really important. There's a particular one that we liked on the behavior-specific praise. So we were able to then provide those handouts for our staff at that point. So the next step then is our principal was able to carve some time into our faculty meetings for the presentations. And at that time, the team got up and shared their information about it, and then shared the Google slide presentations out to the staff. And there was some time in between. So we ended up, presenting, and then there was about a 3-week time period in between. So that way it gives teachers the opportunity to, try out some of that. So we were encouraging teachers, try the approach in your classroom. And we also have an instructional assistant on our core team, as you heard. So that instructional assistant was able to take back information to the other instructional assistants as well. And we felt that that was really important during their monthly meetings to be able to hear more about the strategies too, and be able to maybe apply them to their areas. And so, when we're shifting to Tier 2, we look at it like, again, making it a part of a teacher's repertoire at this point, and suggesting it for them if that's something that might benefit them. And also tailoring it more specifically to specific students. So when I look at, active supervision, being closer to that student, obviously, who needs that, of course, and then increasing your frequency and scanning of your classroom or of that area that may need some assistance. I think about this personally as a teacher because I had a class last year that needed a lot of assistance in the morning routine. I had a 9:05 special. So we had to be out the door pretty much as the students walked in. And I remember giving them, we modeled it, we practiced it, all that interactive modeling that responsive classroom teaches you, and it still wasn't working. So the morning routine was really a tough area for me in the morning when they first come in. And I love to be able to be out in the hallway, greet students. We usually do that. A lot of our teachers stand outside the classroom door as students are walking by and greet everyone in different classes. And I remember, I'd be at the door, but I could hear my class, and I knew I needed to be in my room more than out in the hallway at that point. So I continued to, just be there in the classroom, even though I would have rather, or not rather, but I would have liked to have been outside too, greeting the students coming in. So I think you just have to know your students and the classes and understand that that's what's going to work for your class that year. And of course, stopping at those specific students who may need your guidance a little bit more, being present in the moment. We talk about that a lot. Again, in responsive classroom, you hear that. Having that conversation with students so they know that you're listening to them. We have a lot of distractions in the morning, but to know that they actually, you can build that relationship with them and that understanding that they know that you really care, and that's important. And then, of course, looking at behavior-specific praise. Scott had mentioned the 4-to-1 that's recommended, and of course, we heard it higher than that. We've talked about in the future putting that up in our buildings all around so that visually our teachers and our students can see that, and trying to come up with a way that we can continue to make that grow in our building for sure. Giving the feedback for specific students, knowing that your students there's maybe a particular one that might need that feedback more, like saying, I noticed that you had your papers on your desk, that you're really organized today, and again, looking for those positive moments, observing and monitoring, and again, avoiding, not worrying so much about some of the other distractions, but really paying attention, and then providing the opportunity to give feedback that's positive rather than, being more proactive rather than the reactive. So that's an important part of it. And then, of course, the verbal and nonverbal praise, it could be just something as simple as a smile or a thumbs up between you and that child. But also, we do something, our school does the Dojo points. And so Dojo is an online behavior management system, if you're familiar with that. And it helps to really foster positive student behaviors and classroom culture. Our students can earn points based on their behavior. There is the option to do positive and negative points. We only focus on the positive. We don't give any negative points or take away points at all. And really, the students can earn, like classrooms have like rewards within their own, they're within their own classroom. So an example would be my students, we brainstormed a list of rewards that they would be interested in. And then from there, we had, of course, they wanted like a class pet. And I said to them, well, that's, for 100 dojos, that's not really a lot. So we did do a smaller rewards, but then we worked towards, we decided 1,000 points for the whole class would be, what would be recommended for a class pet. So, that worked out really well because then we were able to get our class pet once they got to that point. But they get those smaller rewards in between, too. And then, of course, the pre-correction, giving those increased positive teacher-student interactions. The specific student can actually show the behavior, so the desired behavior. Again, practicing, modeling. I tend to give a student a heads up and say, hey, by Friday, I'm going to ask you to do this so you can teach the class, and that helps them to buy in a little bit more, too, to the desired behavior. Always setting it up for success, thinking about your problem areas, moving closer to those students again. And we've done something with listing expectations like right on their desk, right in a folder, or right in a pencil box, wherever it's visual for them to see as a reminder. And I always ask students too, when they're struggling, I say, well, what can I do to help you? So what can I do? So we've done things where we've brainstormed a list, and the students really gave me their input on a checklist. This is how I'm going to get myself prepared in the morning, and they did it. So again, this is all ways that you can really help to improve with that. So with that, I am going to turn it over now to Kim McKenney. She's a member of our Tier 2 team, I can't talk, reading specialist and coordinator of our check-in, check-out.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming today. Let's see if that turns. Did that turn? Yep. Okay. The fourth building block of Tier 2 intervention is check-in, check-out. And it is a school-wide mentoring program, and it's targeted for students who need additional support, accountability throughout the day. And the Tier 1 is just not working for them, so they need just something additional. The intervention provides students with positive attention, frequent and structured feedback throughout the day from classroom teachers and also from specialists, and it also provides a homeschool communication tool. We implemented the program over a year ago. One of the first things we did was to change the name from check-in, check-out to PAUSE, Positive Approach with Support. And we felt like the acronym definitely highlighted the fundamentals of the program, and also since we are the Springfield Panthers, it was a nice fit. We view the PAUSE program as a team effort, and these are the individuals involved on a daily basis. The students are invited into the program primarily through the behavior screener that was mentioned before, SRSS-IE, I for internalizing and E for externalizing behavior. However, we also look at academics, attendance, and teacher recommendation. The majority of our students do enter the program because they are exhibiting externalizing behaviors, perhaps lack of effort, lack of focus, distractibility, not completing work. But we have noticed that more recently that we've had several students enter the program for internalizing behaviors. It might be that student in your class that's not causing a problem, but they're not participating. You're not really hearing from them. They're just blending into the background. And for many of these students, we have found that the PAUSE program has been very beneficial in giving them confidence to find their voice. At Springfield, we have 18 students in the PAUSE program currently, and with 200 students in the school, that's about 9%. Parents must grant permission for students to enter the program. We also ask them to sign and return a daily point sheet that I will show you. And because of this, because they sign up for the program and they do sign that sheet daily, they're usually very invested and involved in the program. If you take a look at the link with the handouts, and I won't go over it now, but there is a letter that we send out to parents explaining the program, and then the bottom is a permission slip. The letter is always followed by a phone call. At the beginning in the middle of the year, it was our principal that called and explained and answered any questions. However, the last time, we just did the screener last week, and now the classroom teachers will be contacting the parents and inviting them and telling them about the program. We've had parents who have declined the program for various reasons. They've been very few, and most of the parents, when they're contacted, they're very eager to join with us in supporting their child. The mentors in this program are absolutely, I believe, the heart of this program. I know the classroom teachers are checking the students daily, but the mentors at Springfield go above and beyond, and they really develop a nice bond and relationship with the students. They set the student up for success by meeting with them in the morning, setting a goal, Everyone's goal is to follow our 3 school-wide behavior expectations, being responsible, respectful, and kind. However, they often set an individual goal for each student. And they meet with the classroom teacher because there's a reason why the student is in the program. So we need to focus on that as one of the main goals. They also meet in the afternoon before going home and obviously check out or to see how the day was. Most of our mentors volunteered. Before we implemented this whole program, we sent a sheet out and said, please go ahead and sign it if you would be interested in becoming a mentor. They didn't really know what that involved, but we had several who volunteered. But I would say that if you are the point person for this program, don't be afraid to approach people, staff in your building that you think would be tremendous mentors, but they didn't sign up. There have been a few people that I've approached, and I'm so glad that I did, because once they understood the program and what was expected of them, they were more than eager to help. We currently have 13 mentors. We have instructional assistants, classroom teachers, specialists, our custodian, our counselor, and our principal. So it truly is a team effort. The classroom teachers do not mentor a student in their class. We like students to have an additional support person outside of the classroom. Plus, our classroom teachers are responsible for completing that daily point sheet throughout the day after each subject, which keeps the student accountable. At our school at Springfield, we have at least one student in every classroom in the PAUSE program. Our highest number is grade 3, where we have 5 students in one class. 2 of those students are learning support students, so they're going back between the classroom teacher and the learning support teacher during the day. So once the mentors and the students are identified, it's time to match the mentors with the students. And we look at 3 things. We look at logistics, personalities, and caseload. I would say that the building logistics is the most difficult aspect of matching the students and the mentors together. In our school, we have a K through 3 wing and 4 through 5, and it's important to match a student with a mentor in the same part of the building. And it's also, and many of our instructional assistants are mentors. Their day ends at 3:15, but our student day isn't over until 3:30. So we've had to tweak some things there too. We also look at personalities, and of course, if we're aware of any friction, we try to pair the students with another mentor so they have complementing personalities. And also the caseload. We do want to try to keep the mentor's caseload manageable. And most of our mentors have 1 or 2 students. Our counselor has the most with 3. And because of our low numbers, we often fill in for one another due to absences or meetings. So let me turn this. And so before the mentors and the students start meeting, I meet with the mentors and provide a small notebook containing the roster, procedures, problems that they may encounter, and several pause sheets. I want to go ahead and show you that pause sheet quickly. It is one of the handouts, and this, I've referred to it many times. Let me go ahead and bring that up. Our pause sheet this is just a generic pause sheet, but we have them customized to each grade level, to each teacher, and it's divided into seven sections. So you can see that the daily goals, the goal always is being responsible, respectful, and kind, but you can see the spot at the top for a daily goal. And some of the daily goals have been to be an active participant in class, to focus perhaps in a certain subject. So again, whatever reason that student entered the program, we like to keep that daily goal similar. It can be changed if they needed to work on something from the day before. So you can see there's a total possible points of 42. Our goal for students is to reach 80% when all of the numbers are added up, or that would be 34 out of 42. Our mentors meet with the students in the morning, and they do give them this pause sheet. They collect the sheet from the day before. Hopefully it was signed by parents. And again, they set the goal for the day. The teachers are marking it, and the specialists are marking that sheet throughout the day. Recess can be a little tricky. We don't like the students to take the pause sheet to recess, so it remains in the classroom. But they know that after recess or lunch, they are to go to the hall when we have a point person who will sign those sheets. And they are responsible for getting them signed by themselves. At the end of the day, the students check out with the mentor, and they add all the points up. Before that sheet is sent home, it's important that I have that data to enter into Swiss. So mentors have two ways of sending that information to me. There is a short form that's in your handouts, and basically they would add each column up and put that number. Because one of the slides that I showed you did have a screenshot of that Swiss data that I enter. But another thing that they do is sometimes they'll just take a picture of the daily point sheet and send it or text it to me, so I have that information before it's sent home, and just in case it doesn't return. When will students exit the program? So you can see the 3 criteria that we have for exiting the program. And once they have the students meet these 3, they're eligible to exit the program. However, they don't always. Sometimes the students remain in the program based on the classroom teacher. Most recently, we had a student who wanted to stay in the program because he wanted to stay in the program. He just liked being with the mentor. He liked the security, I think, of the sheet. So we allowed him to stay in the program, and then after a week or two, he went to his mentor and said, can I still meet with you if I don't do the sheet every day? And she said, of course. And it was a good step for him because he was in the program so that he could advocate for himself. It was standing back and not participating. So now he just informally meets with his mentor. The ultimate goal is for the student to self-monitor his or her behavior, and that might look different for each student. So even though we've only had this implemented for about a year, we've seen some really positive things from this program. Most of all, the relationship between the students and the mentors, and them receiving that positive behavior, the positive and the accountability that's received is just a really nice aspect to our positive behavior framework. Okay, our time is running short.
So what I'm going to do for the sake of time is I'm going to make an executive decision and skip through this a little because I want you to have an opportunity to ask us some questions. Remember that triangle I showed you earlier? Here's ours. So, we're pretty much in there with the 80, 15, and the 5. This is, those are the percentages. This is our check-in, check-out data. You can see most of the kids are falling. Those little dots that are right, over that 80% mark, hitting their goal. We wanted to share with you some bumps in the road, but we're going to keep moving because I really want to hear from you. And then also some of our keys to success. I can't say enough that, and I know if you don't have administrative support, it's going to be hard to move forward. You need that administrative support in order to get things done. And those of you that are doing this, you know that. And I have found as a principal that the more people I can get involved, the more committees, the more ownership and leadership I get in my building. I'm going to stop right there because I want to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, your time. What's that? Thank you. Anyone else? You know what? I'll run around with this.
I just have a simple logistical question. Sometimes our specialists, if there's a sub out, they might be yanked or something. What do you do for those children who really need that check-in and their person's absent? Do you have like a building?
We have backup systems. So everyone who's a mentor has a backup mentor. And we're a small building, so every day I can send out the list of who's out. Everybody knows who's in the building for safety reasons and also for those purposes. So right away, someone will say, oh, so-and-so's out today. Now I have to be the backup. So we have systems in place. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
We're high school, 7 through 12. And we just tried to do Tier 2. We barely rolled it out at the end of last year, and we're doing it this year, and we're having a couple issues. And I know it's different than the elementary school because we could, trust them better. But we have a couple issues with almost a similar sheet. Kids are kind of forging their little circles. And then we said, we'll have the teachers sign their name, and some are checking, some are not. So we're having an issue with that. And then when we try to combine the data at the end to see who's making their goals, I think everything is really skewed. And we're not sure if you see that or if you have a suggestion on how to, fix that issue.
At our level, we don't have kids doing that. They haven't found out how to do that yet. My first thought would be to go back to your building expectations. Whenever something is not going the way you want it to, you have to think, well, what are we trying to accomplish here? If our kids are not being respectful, responsible, and kind, let's address that. Let's specifically address that or address the issue that you're talking about where they're changing it. Maybe whether you have class meetings or assemblies, we need to be honest with them and tell them, this is the way we do things. That's just a quick thought. I see a hand back here. Go ahead. We get on that teacher and say, you need to follow through because you have to give the kids the feedback. Hey, Kim's my coordinator. You don't mess with Kim. Kim's all over it. She trains the mentors. She makes sure that things are going smoothly. The mentors work with Kim and the teacher, and you better bet those teachers are following up. Now, there might be a day or so, where you have a crazy day and they don't get the follow-up, but we need to make sure that everybody's doing their part. It's, nothing's perfect. Anyone else?
What happens if parents don't want to be in the program? What do you do then when they need a behavioral intervention? But
We find other ways to meet the needs of those students. We don't technically put them in a check-in and check-out, but there's other supports that we put into place to support those kids. And it's usually the kids that need it the most are the ones that, they're in it for a day, they have a bad day, and then the parent pulls them out. And it's like, what are you going to do if the parent's handcuffing you, and not allowing you to do what you know needs to be done? You do the best you can. You come up with other strategies that may not require the parent permission because it's just throughout the day. Back here.
We actually just implemented the check-in, check-out system this last quarter of school just to kind of get our feet wet to see where we need to fix. And we do the same thing with the points charts, just like you guys have. But we, instead of sending those charts home for parents to sign, we have a slip that goes home to the parents with the child's name, the date, if they met their goal or not. And then they also have to write on there one good thing that they did that day and what they're going to work on tomorrow. And that's what we have coming back, because I don't think most of the kids are going to bring those charts back. But we're also having the problem with the teachers as well, helping those kids out, making sure those charts are signed and going over it with the kid as to what their score was.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else as we wrap up? Any other thoughts?
We do need to wrap up. If you have any additional questions, please come up and ask our team, please. Thank you guys, everyone. It was wonderful. It's always great to get the boots on the ground experience.